He had spent most of his life believing one simple thing. Dragons were dangerous. Not misunderstood. Not majestic. Not rare miracles of nature. Dangerous. The kind of creatures that left burned fields behind them, cracked stone with a single misstep, and never, ever looked at humans as anything more than something small and temporary. That's what he had been taught. What everyone believed. And for a long time he never questioned it. Until the day the baby showed up. It was early morning when he found it. The kind of morning where the city still felt half asleep, streets quiet except for the distant hum of machines waking up for the day. He had been walking his usual route past the old storage yards, hands in his pockets, mind somewhere else entirely. That's when he heard it. A small sound, not loud, not threatening, just there. First he ignored it. Could have been anything. A stray animal, wind pushing debris around, some broken pipe whining in the cold. But then it came again, softer this time, and somehow weaker. He stopped, turned his head slightly toward the source. A pile of rusted containers sat stacked near the far end of the yard. Dark, forgotten, the kind of place no one bothered to check anymore. The sound came from there. He hesitated. Every instinct told him to walk away. Nothing good came from investigating strange noises in abandoned places. Still, he stepped forward. Slowly, carefully, each step quieter than the last. The closer he got, the clearer the sound became. Not mechanical, not environmental, alive. That realization alone made his chest tighten. And when he reached the gap between two containers and looked inside, he froze. There it was, small, curled awkwardly against the cold metal ground. Scales dull, wings folded unevenly like they hadn't quite figured out how to exist yet. A dragon, a baby dragon. For a second he didn't move, didn't breathe. Every story he had ever heard hit him all at once. Fire, destruction, unpredictable violence, danger. His first instinct was to step back, to leave, to report it, to let someone else, someone trained, handle it. But then the dragon moved, just slightly. His head lifted a fraction, eyes barely open, and it made that sound again. Not a roar, not a threat, a weak, almost broken chirp. It wasn't hunting. It wasn't guarding anything. It was struggling, hungry, alone. That didn't fit the stories at all. He frowned, took a slow step closer. That's not right, he muttered under his breath. The dragon didn't react aggressively, didn't snap, didn't even try to move away. It just watched him, barely, like it didn't have the strength to do anything else. Something shifted in his chest. Not enough to erase years of belief, but enough to make him hesitate. You're supposed to be dangerous, he said quietly. The dragon blinked slowly. No fire, no threat, just existence. He crouched down slightly, keeping his distance. Aren't you? No answer. Just another soft, tired sound. And that was the moment everything started to break. He didn't remember deciding to help it. There wasn't a clear moment where he chose to go against everything he believed. It just happened. One second he was standing there, unsure. The next, he was pulling off his jacket and stepping closer. Don't bite me, he murmured. The dragon didn't move. Didn't resist as he carefully wrapped the jacket around it. Didn't fight as he lifted it. It was lighter than he expected. Too light. That worried him more than anything else. Back in his apartment, everything felt different. Smaller. Too quiet. He set the dragon down gently on the table, stepping back immediately after. Giving it space. Giving himself space. Okay, he said under his breath. Now what? The dragon didn't answer. Barely moved. Just lay there, breathing shallow, eyes half closed. That look again. Not dangerous. Not powerful. Just tired. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once across the room. This is a bad idea, he muttered. No one would agree with what he was doing. No one would say this was safe. And part of him still believed that, still expected it to suddenly snap, to reveal something hidden, something sharp and deadly. But it didn't. It just stayed there. and somehow that made it harder to walk away. The first time it ate, he realized something important. He had placed a small piece of food near it, not even sure if it would respond. First, nothing happened. Then slowly, the dragon moved. Not quickly, not aggressively, just enough to reach forward and take it. Carefully, like it wasn't even sure it was allowed to. That wasn't how dangerous creatures behaved. That was how something behaved when it expected everything to be taken away. He sat down across from it, watching quietly. "You don't trust anything, do you?" he said softly. The dragon didn't look at him, just focused on eating. Slow, careful, grateful in a way that didn't need words. And something in his chest shifted again. Days passed, then more. The dragon grew stronger. Not bigger, not yet, but steadier. It started moving around the apartment, exploring, watching, learning. And every time it looked at him, it wasn't with fear. It wasn't with aggression. It was something else. Something he didn't have a name for at first. Until he realized it was trust. The same thing he had been so sure dragons didn't feel. One evening, it climbed onto his arm for the first time. No hesitation, no fear, just a quiet, deliberate choice. He froze slightly, unsure what to do. "You're really not what I expected," he murmured. The dragon shifted slightly, settling more comfortably. Warm, alive, safe, not dangerous, not destructive, just there. And in that moment, something simple but powerful clicked into place. Maybe dragons weren't what he had been told. Maybe they never were. Or maybe they just needed someone willing to see them before deciding what they were. He looked down at the small creature resting against him. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I was wrong." The dragon made a soft sound in response. Not correcting him, not judging, just staying. And for the first time in his life, he didn't see a dragon. He saw something worth protecting. The next morning, he woke up to a sound he didn't expect to hear in his apartment. Scratching. Not aggressive. Not frantic. Just persistent. Like something trying to figure out how the world worked one surface at a time. He opened his eyes slowly, still half caught between sleep and awareness. "No way," he muttered. The dragon was gone from where he had left it. For a second, panic flickered in his chest. Then he heard it again. Scritch, scritch, tap. He sat up immediately. "Hey, where are you?" He stopped, because there it was, on the kitchen counter, standing awkwardly near a stack of bowls, tail flicking slightly as it examined everything like it had never seen a kitchen before, which, considering its size and condition when he found it, might actually be true. "How did you even get up there?" he asked quietly. The dragon didn't respond. It was too focused on a spoon, specifically the way the light reflected off it. He rubbed his face. "Okay," he said slowly. "We're already doing this kind of chaos." The dragon tapped the spoon once with its nose. Clink. It startled itself slightly, then blinked at the sound like it had discovered physics for the first time. He exhaled a small laugh despite himself. "Yeah, you're definitely not what I expected." Over the next few days, he learned something important. The dragon wasn't destructive. Not in the way he had imagined. Curious? Yes. Clumsy? Absolutely. Unpredictable? Constantly. But not violent. Not even close. It knocked things over more than anything else. Chairs. Books. Once nearly a full cup of water, which resulted in it staring at the spill for a full minute like it was personally responsible for the laws of gravity. He should have been frustrated. He wasn't. Mostly because every time it made a mistake, it looked at him. Not in fear. Not in defiance. In checking. Like it was asking without words. "Did I do something wrong? Are you going to send me away now?" And every time, he didn't. On the 5th day, he started testing something. He placed food on different parts of the room. Not to train it, just to observe. The dragon always chose carefully. Never rushing. Never grabbing. Always watching him first. As if his reaction mattered more than the food itself. That bothered him more than he expected. "You're waiting for permission for everything," he said one evening. leaning against the counter. The dragon paused mid-bite, looked at him, still quiet. He sighed. No one taught you that, did they? Silence. Then, slowly, the dragon lowered its head slightly. Not in submission, in uncertainty. And that was worse, because it meant it had learned it somewhere else. Before him, before safety, before anything gentle. That night he couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching the city lights blur against the glass. The dragon was curled nearby, asleep for once, small chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. He spoke quietly, even though it couldn't hear him. They called you dangerous, he murmured. A pause. But you don't even know how to take up space without asking for permission. He leaned back in his chair. What happened to you? No answer came, only the soft sound of breathing beside him. The first sign something was wrong came on the 7th day. He noticed it in the way the dragon stopped exploring. It didn't climb anymore, didn't knock things over, didn't wander. It just stayed close, closer than before, always within sight, always watching him. At first he thought it was bonding, trust deepening, but then he realized something else. It wasn't just staying close, it was tracking him. Every movement, every shift, every time he left the room, its head turned slightly to follow. Hey, he said one afternoon, crouching down. You okay? The dragon blinked slowly. No answer, just watching. He frowned slightly. You're not afraid of me, are you? That question changed something. The dragon hesitated, just for a second, then lowered its head. Not fear, not aggression, something heavier, conditioned. He exhaled slowly. No, he said quietly. That's not what this is. He reached out slowly, stopping just before touching it. The dragon didn't move away, didn't flinch, just waited. And in that stillness, he realized something he didn't want to admit. It wasn't learning trust from him. It was learning not to lose it. And that was very different. He sat back down slowly. You think I'm going to leave? He said quietly. The dragon didn't respond. But it didn't need to, because the answer was written in everything it did. He looked at it for a long moment, then shook his head slightly. Yeah, he murmured. Someone did a number on you. He stood up again, walked to the kitchen, then came back with food, not placing it far away this time, not testing, just setting it down beside him. Close, intentional. The dragon looked at the food, then at him, then slowly took a bite, still watching him, but this time, less like waiting for loss, and more like learning something new entirely. The change didn't happen all at once. It never does. It started with small things. The dragon stopped following him from room to room every time he moved. Then it stopped reacting sharply when doors closed. Then it stopped flinching at sudden noises in the hallway. Each shift was subtle enough that he almost missed them, until one day he realized the silence in the apartment felt different. Not tense, not watched, just lived in. He tested it without meaning to. One afternoon, he left the apartment door open while bringing in groceries. Normally, the dragon would have been right there, watching, tracking, waiting for signs of departure. This time, it stayed on the couch, watching him, yes, but not moving, not panicking, just observing. He paused in the doorway, grocery bag in hand. You're getting braver, he muttered. The dragon tilted its head slightly. Still no words, but something about its gaze had changed. Less fear of losing, more certainty of staying. That night he made a mistake. Not intentional, just a normal human lapse. He raised his voice on a phone call. Nothing extreme, just frustration, stress, a sharp edge to his tone. It lasted less than a minute, but the reaction was immediate. The dragon froze. Every muscle tightened. Its wings pulled in close, and it pressed itself into the corner of the couch like it was trying to disappear into the fabric itself. He noticed instantly, ended the call, set the phone down. Hey, he said quietly. No response. He took a slow breath. I wasn't angry at you. Still nothing. The dragon wasn't looking at him anymore. It was listening for something else. Something that wasn't there, but had been before. He sat down on the floor slowly, giving it space. "That wasn't about you," he repeated softer. A pause. Then added almost carefully, "No one's going to hit you." That got a reaction. Small, barely visible. A shift in attention. Not trust. Not yet. But recognition. That he was different from whatever came before. He stayed there for a while. Not approaching. Not forcing contact. Just existing in the same space. Eventually, the dragon's breathing slowed. The tension didn't disappear completely, but it loosened. Like a knot not fully undone but no longer pulling as tightly. He spoke quietly again. "You've been treated like something fragile that breaks when you breathe wrong," he said. A pause. "That's not the same as being safe." The dragon blinked slowly, watching him again now, carefully. He nodded slightly. "We'll fix that." The next few days he changed everything about how he interacted with it. No sudden movements. No loud reactions. No forcing proximity. He let it come to him instead of the other way around. And something unexpected started happening. The dragon began to explore again. Slowly, cautiously, but not from fear this time. From curiosity. It would climb onto chairs, not to escape, but to observe him working. It would walk across the room, pause, then continue, like it was testing whether the world would still be there afterward. And every time, it was. One evening, as the sun dipped low outside the window, he noticed something new. The dragon wasn't watching him anymore. Not constantly, not obsessively. It was resting, curled near the edge of the couch, eyes half closed. Relaxed in a way he hadn't seen before. He spoke softly. "You're not scanning the room anymore." The dragon didn't open its eyes, just gave a small sound. He leaned back slightly. "That's new." A pause. Then he added quietly, "That means you're starting to believe it." The dragon shifted slightly, settling deeper into rest. Not in response, just in comfort. He watched it for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Yeah," he murmured. "Good." That night, for the first time since he found it, the dragon didn't wake up when he moved around the apartment. Didn't track him. Didn't check exits. Didn't prepare for disappearance. It just slept. Because something in it had begun to understand a simple truth. Not all humans leave. Not all voices rise into danger. Not all moments are warnings. Some are just life. Quiet. Ordinary. Safe. And for a creature that had never known the difference before, that was the beginning of everything changing. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. The kind of day that didn't announce anything important. No storms. No warnings. Just light drifting through the window and the usual quiet hum of life inside the apartment. The dragon was near the table while he worked. Not sleeping this time. Not fully relaxed either. Just present, occasionally shifting position. Occasionally watching him without the old tension in its body. He had gotten used to that rhythm now. Or at least, he thought he had. The sound came from the hallway. A knock. Sharp. Unexpected. The human paused immediately. So did the dragon. But the reactions were different now than they used to be. He didn't feel panic first. And it didn't either. It looked toward the door, alert. But not collapsing inward like before. Not scrambling to hide. Not freezing in terror. Just aware. He stood slowly. "Probably nothing," he muttered, mostly to himself. Another knock followed. More insistent. He frowned slightly and walked toward the door. The dragon stayed where it was. But its eyes tracked him. Not fearfully. Not desperately. Just observing. He opened the door. Two people stood outside. Not familiar. Not friendly. Their posture said official before they even spoke. The human didn't like the feeling that settled in his chest immediately. One of them spoke first. "Reports indicate an unregistered aerial species presence in this sector." The human blinked slowly. "What?" The second one glanced past him into the apartment. Not subtle. Not careful. Just direct scanning. Then their eyes locked onto the dragon. Still inside. Still visible. Still small. "Confirmed," they said quietly. The human's body shifted slightly without him thinking. A subtle step forward. Not aggressive, just blocking. It's not hurting anyone, he said. The first officer's expression didn't change. That is not the classification standard. A pause. The dragon had moved closer to the edge of the room now. Not panicking, but alert again. Old instincts resurfacing but not fully taking over. Because something else was there too now. Something new. He noticed. Of course he did. And that mattered. Step aside, the second officer said. The human didn't move. No. Simple. Immediate. No hesitation. The first officer narrowed his eyes slightly. This entity may pose a containment risk. The human let out a short breath. Almost a laugh but not amused. You didn't see it when I found it, he said quietly. It couldn't even stand properly. A pause. It's not a threat. It's just alive. The officers exchanged a look. Not convinced. Not interested in nuance. Just procedure. The dragon shifted behind him slightly. He felt it more than saw it. Not retreating. Not hiding. Just staying close. He didn't look back. It trusts me, he added. The first officer responded immediately. Trust is not a classification factor. That sentence hit differently than it should have. The human's jaw tightened slightly. It should be, he said. Silence. The second officer raised a device. A soft hum filled the air. The dragon reacted instantly. Muscles tightening, wings pulling inward slightly. Old fear. Old memory. But it didn't flee. Not yet. Because something anchored it. The human stepped back into the doorway fully now, standing between them and the dragon without hesitation. Don't, he said quietly. The officer paused. Stand down, they replied. He shook his head once. No, not louder, just firmer. The kind of refusal that didn't need volume. The dragon moved closer behind him. Not hiding, but choosing position. Choosing proximity to the one thing in the room that had never made it feel like something to be managed. The device in the officer's hand flickered. Stability readings inconsistent, the second officer said. The first officer frowned. The human spoke again. You don't get it, he said quietly. It doesn't react like that anymore. A pause. It reacts to me now. The officers didn't answer, but they were watching. Not just the dragon. Him. The dragon made a small sound behind him. Not fear. Not warning. Something closer to uncertainty returning but not fully taking over. He didn't turn around. Just reached his hand slightly backward. Not grabbing. Just offering contact. A signal. The dragon pressed forward immediately into it. That small touch changed everything in the room. Not dramatically, but enough. The officers saw it. The response. Immediate. Natural. Not controlled. Not trained. Just chosen. The first officer lowered the device slightly. Report pending reassessment, he said finally. The second officer hesitated. Then added, This is unusual behavior. The human exhaled slowly. Yeah, he said. It is. A pause. Then softer. But it's not dangerous. Silence followed again. Longer this time. He finally stepped slightly to the side, but not away from the dragon. Still between it and them. Still choosing position. The officers didn't advance immediately. Just watched. Measuring something they didn't have a category for. And the dragon stayed behind him. Not because it was told to. Not because it was trained. But because for the first time in its life, standing behind someone didn't feel like waiting to be abandoned. It felt like being protected. The silence in the doorway stretched longer than anyone seemed comfortable with. Not tense in the explosive way people expected from confrontations like this. Something quieter. Heavier. Like everyone in the room was trying to map a situation that didn't match any rulebook they knew. The officers didn't move forward. He didn't step aside. And the dragon didn't retreat. The second officer finally spoke again, her voice lower this time. It is displaying attachment behavior beyond normal classification thresholds. The human let out a slow breath. Yeah, he said. That's kind of the point. The first officer glanced at him sharply. Explain. He didn't hesitate. Not anymore. When I found it, he said quietly, it didn't trust anything. A pause. It wasn't dangerous. It was shut down. He glanced back slightly over his shoulder, not fully turning, just enough to acknowledge it was still there. It learned what I showed it. The second officer frowned. That is not a recognized behavioral recovery pathway. He gave a small, tired exhale. Then your recognition is incomplete. That line landed heavier than expected. Not aggressive, just factual. The dragon shifted slightly behind him again. Not fear now, not panic. Something more subtle. Unease but tempered. Because the presence at the door wasn't like before. No sudden force. No immediate removal. Just assessment. Still, memory doesn't need repetition to return. The dragon remembered enough to stay close. He felt it immediately, and adjusted his stance without thinking. Just a fraction closer. A shield without needing to announce itself. The officers noticed. Of course they did. The first officer narrowed his eyes slightly. You are establishing yourself as a protective anchor point. The human blinked once, then shrugged slightly. If that's your term for it. The second officer stepped half a pace forward. Not aggressive. Procedural. You are not authorized to maintain custody of an unregistered species. He nodded slowly. I didn't maintain custody, he said quietly. I didn't even know what it was when I found it. A pause. I just didn't leave it there. Silence again. Different from before. Less confrontation. More recalculation. The dragon made a small sound behind him. Soft. Almost questioning. He immediately reached back again. Just his hand. Steady and familiar now. The dragon pressed into it instantly. No hesitation at all. That single motion changed something in the officer's posture. Not their authority, but their certainty. The first officer looked down slightly. It is not exhibiting hostility, he said more slowly than before. The second officer replied, nor escape behavior. A pause. The human spoke again, quieter this time. Because it doesn't think it needs to, he said. The officers looked at him again. He continued, that's what trust looks like when it actually works. The first officer lowered his device fully now. Not deactivated. Just no longer aimed. This does not align with prior incident records, he said. The human gave a faint nod. Probably because those records didn't include anyone treating it like something worth keeping alive. That wasn't accusation, just observation, and that made it harder to dismiss. The second officer looked between them again. The dragon stayed behind him. Still, steady, not hiding anymore, just choosing position. We will require observation, she said finally. The human didn't answer immediately. He looked down slightly, then nodded once. Fine, he said. A pause. But you don't take it. The first officer raised an eyebrow slightly. Define take. The human looked up. You don't separate it from here. Silence. The officers exchanged another glance. Not disagreement. Not agreement. Just recalibration again. The dragon pressed closer into his hand once more, as if confirming the reality of what was being said. He didn't look back, just kept his voice steady. It doesn't do well with being moved, he added quietly. That's not a threat. It's just fact. The second officer studied him for a long moment. Then the dragon. Then the space between them. Noted, she said finally. And for the first time since the encounter began, the room stopped feeling like a place where something was about to be taken, and started feeling like a place where something had already been claimed. Not by force, not by authority, but by the simple, undeniable fact that when the dragon had a choice, it never moved away from him. The officers didn't leave immediately. They stood there a little longer than expected, like the situation had stopped fitting into any clean category they could report upward without questions. The second officer glanced once more at her device, then lowered it fully. We will log this as an ongoing behavioral deviation case, she said finally. The first officer nodded once. Not approval. Not dismissal. Just acceptance that this wasn't something they were resolving today. Observation status, he confirmed. The human exhaled slowly. Fine, he repeated. But his stance didn't change. Not even slightly, because agreement on paper didn't change what stood behind him. The dragon stayed close the entire time. Not hiding anymore, but not stepping forward either. Just anchored to him like the simplest truth it understood in the room. When the officers finally turned to leave, it didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't follow. It just watched. Quietly, carefully, until the door clicked shut again. Only then did the tension leave the apartment. Not all at once. Slowly, like something exhaling after holding its breath too long. The human stayed still for a moment after the door closed. Then finally let his shoulders relax slightly. That went better than expected, he muttered under his breath. Behind him, the dragon made a soft sound. He turned slightly. Yeah, he said gently. I know. Still not fun. The dragon stepped closer immediately. No hesitation. No doubt. Just returning to position. The human reached back automatically, resting a hand against it. Warm. Steady. Real. A long moment passed. Then he walked back into the room and closed the door fully this time. Not locking it, just closing it. Because something about the situation no longer felt like something that needed barriers to survive. He leaned against the counter, watching the dragon settle again into the familiar space of the apartment. They're going to come back, he said quietly. Not a question, just awareness. The dragon looked at him. He continued, but they don't understand what they saw yet. A pause. Then softer. Neither did I at first. The dragon tilted its head slightly. No fear. No panic. Just listening. He smiled faintly. I thought you were dangerous too, he admitted. A pause. But you're not the thing I should have been worried about. He straightened slightly. It was what happens when nobody checks what a creature becomes when it's alone too long. Silence followed. Not heavy. Just thoughtful. The dragon moved closer again, brushing lightly against his leg. A simple contact. No request behind it. Just presence. He looked down and nodded once. Yeah, he said quietly. I get it now. Outside, the city continued as if nothing had changed. Lights flickered on distant buildings. Voices passed through hallways. Systems ran their usual routines. But inside the apartment, something had shifted permanently. Not because the world agreed. Not because rules changed. But because one small creature that had once been labeled dangerous had decided, without being told, that safety looked like a human who stayed. And for the first time in its life, it didn't need to wait by a window to believe that.